UK intends instead to negotiate a hard form of Brexit, which will result potentially in a more distant relationship with the EU than the one Norway currently enjoys. That would enable the UK to move away from EU standards in areas like workers' rights and environmental protections. It would deprive people in Scotland of the freedom we currently enjoy to study, live, work in the single market, and also limit our ability to attract people from Europe to live and study in Scotland, something that could see Scotland's working age population decline in years to come. And it is worth stressing that last point at a time when immigration is a controversial topic in many countries. People who have moved to Scotland don't just benefit our economy and public services, they enrich our country and our society in many ways.
You know, the amount of people that I've seen throughout the months type up their own equivalent of that very statement. And each and every time, it appears as if these people see no issue with it. And I just don't understand how that statement is able to glide over everybody's head. Doesn't even ruffle any feathers. You know? I mean, think about it. What she's essentially saying is that as a populace, as a collective, we're beginning to dwindle in numbers, or we're on the verge of. And there's never any follow-ups or references as to why. Not once does she or any of them ever announce investigations into the matter. There's nothing at all. Nor has there ever been. She never mentions anything relating to native birth incentive or marriage incentive or anything that would be considered normal. And instead goes on to talk about immigration is the fucking solution all the time. I've not even once seen a fake display of concern. And isn't it funny that on the one hand we have the United Nations, her paymaster, and their multi-billionaire Greenpeace buckers like that wanker Al Gore, etc., who fundamentally want to destroy the Western world in order to obtain their wealth and so on. And they want to depopulate this planet in the process. And then, on the other hand, we have this thin-lipped fucking hobbit peddling all the exact same talking points. Isn't it funny? It's almost as if she's doing thy bidding. It's almost as if there's really a correlation between Thin Lips and her migrant hard-on and the UN's mass migration agenda. Second of all, on a separate note, it's also a cop-out. Theoretically, or a lie, in layman's terms. I mean, what difference would freedom of movement make to a post-Brexit Scotland in comparison to the Scotland we're in currently? She's had umpteen years, as had her predecessor, to attract people from Europe, to no avail seemingly. The only real difference between the Scotland of now and the hypothetical Scotland of tomorrow is that, given them the ability to control who comes into this country via devolved immigration powers or via so-called independence, is that they would have the ability to attract people from non-EU countries too. And it just so happens that the aforementioned multi-billionaire backers have been forcing little fuckers like Thin Lips to implement all this human rights adaptations to our legal system. And that's all for the incoming tsunami of African diaspora. Their population set to double, our population's dwindling. Thin Lips, who salivates at the prospect of diversifying Scotland, the new Scots, decide to white knight for his useless boot. Why don't we take into consideration the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, one of the first things that Nicola Sturgeon signed us up to when she took over after Alex Salmond. Now, granted, the translations within this video that came out in 2017 could be to a degree disputed, and different websites and whatnot will tell you slightly different things. For the benefit of this video, you'll be able to take away a brief idea. Number one, end poverty in all its forms.
Of Scotland's Climate Justice Fund. I'm so impressed by this. It just blows me away, as we say in America. How is this climate justice fund being used to develop climate change mitigation projects in select developing countries in Africa? That's a lot of political will to convince your people to support that. It's the right thing to do, but it...
Oh, that's nice. Spoiler alert. She didn't convince the Scottish people. Redistributing our wealth to countries in the Middle East and Africa under the pretext of a climate justice initiative, while sit there and continuously blame Westminster for why poverty levels in Scotland continue to increase, while child poverty levels in Scotland continue to increase, why food banks keep cropping up across the country. All they do is continuously blame austerity, blame Westminster, and proclaim that because they don't have all the evolved powers at their disposal, they won't be able to fully mitigate these issues. Now surely if that was the case, they'd be pulling money from elsewhere within their budget to mitigate, but instead of that, they pump money into nonsensical social justice related shit, as well as pumping money into Malawi and Zambia, and this is something that she never up. A lot of political will to convince your people. I mean, just get fucked. She is absolutely delusional. Either she's a complete deluded feminist who's been exploited to high heaven, or in fact, she knows she's lying.
It's so inspiring. But tell us about this Climate Justice Fund.
I think Scotland was the first country anywhere in the world to establish a climate justice fund.
Yeah, we're the first country in the world to do everything. That's great. Free lives and promote well-being for all ages. Translation, yada yada. And then what does it say here? The named person scheme. Well. I've stated on many occasions before now that the United Nations played a role in the overhaul of our education system. I've stated on many occasions before now that the majority, if not every single policy, Nicola Sturgeon is responsible for steamrolling on ahead with. The United Nations have got something to do with it. Yeah, and I pose the question, is she deluded or does she know what she's doing? Sure, inclusive and equitable education, yada yada, and socially engineering children, well. Dumb down the curriculum. Yep. Failing numeracy, plummeting down the world rankings in comparison to where it once was. That's not even the half of it. Well, that goes without saying. First country in the world to implement a compulsory LGB emphasis in the T-forced education, promoting feminism everywhere, marginalising heterosexuality and white boys. Of course. All part of parcel on globalised Scotland. Ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, modern energy for all. Translation, increased taxes on traditional fuels, institute usage caps for every household. Monitored by health-destroying smart meters. Now, I don't know that much about these smart meters, but what are the SNP currently pushing for? Talking to no end about the benefits of these smart meters. Goal number 10. Reducing inequality within and among countries.
UN global goals. Each and every one of them is really important, but for me, this one, reduced inequalities, is particularly important because giving everybody the best chance in life is so important wherever in the world you live.
We need freedom of movement because our population is ageing. Just so happens that reduced inequality is 10.7, as I've stated before. Of safe, regular, and orderly migration. In relation to climate change, quote, goes without saying that she's following the script down to a T. Fly to Norway in a CO2 emitting plane, in the utmost urgency to act on the so-called climate emergency. She chose to fly to Norway in a CO2 emitting plane to give her shitty speech instead of just using a video conference application of sorts. It's quite beyond me. I said, is she just simply a useful idiot, a deluded feminist, or does she know exactly what she's doing? You be the judge.